stressful. The morning discussion.
Great. Sarah? Sarah? I think Sarah.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Sarah?
That's Sarah.
Yeah, that's Hi, Sarah. How are you?
Hello.
Good. So, let's start. Where's the presentation? Well, that's
You might want to ask Sarah to mute herself if she's not talking, because we can hear every single thing she does.
Oh, yeah.
And it's being recorded, Sarah.
Yourself. And we're recording, so that's even more. Okay. I'm just waiting for the presentation.
It's
Julie.
Yeah,
Coming.
it's right over there.
Julie.
It's over there, yeah.
Oh, Julie, don't hide yourself. It's coming there.
There you go.
Yeah, she should be here. Okay. All right. Hold on, please. Okay, great. So next session, again about gender. I promise I don't only talk about girls. I talk about boys too. So we're gonna be introducing another tool. This one it's a little bit more technical, and it requires way more time. But it's a really great tool that Population Council developed, and that it was actually implemented for the Youth in Action program. And it's going to be implemented in other projects. So Sarah, that is on the line. Sarah, can you introduce yourself?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. My name is Sarah Blake. I'm a consultant with the Population Council, and I work on a number of projects around advancing girl-centered programming and evidence-based approaches, specifically around faith-based programs, but we have a broader approach to developing a community of practice in improving the ways that programs use information. And the roster was really developed out of that thinking. So how to connect all of the information that we can get to inform program design.
Great, thank you. So it's actually quite exciting time for Save the Children, because now we finally have the gender equality working group functioning and very active. So that's great. So we're going to present a little bit on the Save the Children's commitment to gender equality. We're not going to get too much into details of how the group works. We'll do that on the face-to-face meeting. Then Sarah is going to present on the girl roster, the tool, the basics, how it has been implemented also in Ethiopia and Malawi. So we're going to have 2 case studies on that. Some nitty-gritties like required resources, timing, etc. Then we're going to go into groups to do an exercise. And then we're going to do, different slides we're going to have about the understanding of the table and the exercise, because this exercise is actually a little bit more in detail, especially when we're looking at the data collection, the age of the girls, etc. We're going to do some sort of interpretation of the table, and then we will discuss the programming. And then the report out to the plenary, and then you are free to go wherever you want, I think. This is the last session. Okay.
Okay, how's that?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tessa. I think I've talked to most of you already today. I work for Save the Children UK. I'm based in London. I'm a livelihoods advisor, and I focus mainly on kind of private sector engagement, but also on youth livelihoods. I just wanted to give a brief introduction on Save the Children's commitments and guiding principles to gender equality. I think a lot of you might already know this. I think we had expected more of an external audience, so we'll keep it quite brief, just to remind everyone of our basic commitments and principles, and that then kind of provides the framework for looking at a very concrete tool in a bit more detail. So in 2014, we have adopted our principles and commitments for gender equality. And together with the definitions and key terms and approaches, these can be found in the in our principles documents, and that's the document that you can see here. It's called Transforming Inequalities, Transforming Lives. So probably some of you already know it. It is not really a how-to guide, but it's really like the document that really spells out our principles and commitments in more detail, and it's a really important framework for all of us to know. Basically, I think just to say it in a nutshell, our statement of principles is that gender equality really is a basic right for all people, including girls and boys. Save the Children believes that it is critical to directly address gender discrimination, but also to promote gender equality, in order to ensure that no harm comes to children and to advance our vision for a world where every child attains their equal right to survive, learn, and be protected. And this statement of principles is then detailed and made a bit more concrete in the form of 6 principles. Okay, Patricia is telling me to speak louder. I'll try, but please remind me in between if you can't hear me. So I think the first principle is really that equality is a right. So it's not just a nice add-on, but it's really should be at the core of what we do as a child rights organization. The second principle really is about that we need to really address root causes. So it's quite a strong commitment to trying to transform the norms and cultural values and also the legislation that perpetuates existing gender inequality. The third principle really is about holistic approaches. It means that we need to address the whole community, not only girls. In some contexts, it might be justified to target girls specifically or focus on girls specifically, but really, usually when we really want to transform gender inequality, we need to work with the whole communities, including men and boys. It's also really about meaningful participation, which is principle 4, so it links a lot with the sessions that we participated in earlier today. The 5th principle really is also quite important, and it makes clear that we might do standalone programs, but also it's important to apply a gender lens and gender equality commitments to all the different sectors that we work in. And then the 6th principle emphasizes the need and the value of collaboration and learning, and we'll talk about that a bit more when we talk with Sarah Blake, who works for the Population Council. This is then made a bit more concrete again by our 4 targets. So we now have a gender goal in our post-2015 vision, and that spells out 4 targets. So it's you can see on the slides, it's really about preventing and eliminating all forms of violence against women and girls. But it's also really about establishing the equal right of women to earn, own, and inherit assets, and to reduce the burden of unpaid work on women and girls. So I think this is probably where we have the strongest direct link with our ASST work. But then it also goes on to talk about SRH rights of women and girls, and again, participation and influence of women and girls needs to be increased. So many of you might have seen this already. So this kind of spells out our commitment that we expect all of our programs to be gender sensitive. So really, with all the programs, the aim is to come to this stage where we take account of the different abilities and opportunities and challenges that boys, men, and women and girls face. And ideally, whenever possible, we should try and reach a gender transformative state. So that is really a state of program. So that means that really we need to tackle the underlying root causes of gender inequality. In Save the Children UK, but I think other members do it too, we actually have a gender marker that we apply to all new proposals to kind of measure where on this continuum we think the proposal is, or the program design is. And when we see that it's actually somewhere on the gender exploitative side or the gender unaware side, then first there's a mechanism to say this is a no-go, it's part of the no-go process, and then actually the proposal has to be revised and reviewed to shift it at least to the gender sensitive side of things. I think.
Yeah, one comment on that. So the gender marker is being updated. So there's going to be 2 tools developed by the gender equality group. So we'll get those eventually. But also on the concepts, this is very important because a lot of you asked which are the concepts that we need to use. Like a lot of times we use gender blind. We don't use gender blind concept in Save the Children, just gender unaware, because it's a little bit more general and abstract, and it avoids different things. And also when we look at the gender sensitive, you also have to look at the gender focused programming, which is only focusing on girls, and that we don't want that either. It has to be inclusive. Yeah. So be familiar with this.
Okay. And so basically, to be able to design good programs, then we need to do a gender analysis. It can be done in very different forms, and some of the tools that we've heard about today can be a good, valuable tools to do that. So basically, this is then about looking at the differences and understanding why are these differences in place and what can we do about them, and how do we adapt programs to address gender inequalities and to avoid exploiting existing inequalities. And then I think also something that we often overlook is actually how to apply also gender equality principles to monitoring and evaluation. I think often we kind of stop at the design phase. It's again maybe something that we could discuss in the face-to-face meeting a bit more. And then again, most of you might already be aware. So we've developed this toolkit. I brought one copy here. You can all have a look at it later. So this really, I think, is our main toolkit that provides guidance on how to design gender-sensitive or transformative programs, how to evaluate, and also how to work with others, how to communicate with others to make clear why this is actually important. So there are a lot of very practical tools and also kind of other resources to, links to other good resources. So yeah, I think it's, we've had this for a while, I think also since 2014, but I think it's really quite a useful starting point to just starting to apply a gender lens. I think the one good thing is that it actually has very specific thematic also tools and guidance on livelihoods or education, SRH. And there's nothing that is specific to ASST. But a lot of the ASST dimensions are covered in the other sectors. And again, it's maybe something that we could discuss tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, if that is good enough, or do we actually want to advocate for putting like a proper ASST section in this toolkit. Okay, thank you very much. That was just a brief introduction. We have maybe a minute for questions, and now we need to move on to the next. We could also take questions later. Did you want to?
No, I'm sorry. I was just fixing my.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So I have a question. So say you wanted to conduct or implement one of these tools with a team somewhere. Is there a way to get trained on the tool?
Yeah.
To do that better?
Actually, Diana from the Gender Equality Group, they're going to be trying to do different meetings and how to utilize the tools. But we're still discussing how is that going to go, because we need obviously funding and more human.
I know.
Is there an online training or something at this point, or?
I think
I heard from them.
Yeah, they're talking on it, but some of the tools are being updated, so we're working on that.
I think the online courses are part of the new strategy, but we have some kind of more informal resources in SUK. So because we have what's called gender champions, so people from across the organization have been trained as gender champions, and we actually sent them out to country programs and regional offices to provide trainings, and they follow like a standard.
So if you wanted advice on implementing one of these, you could call them?
Absolutely. You can call them, or you could even ask them to come and support you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So do you have to be with Save UK?
No.
No, that's within the group, yeah.
I don't think so. So I can facilitate contact to Sheila, who is our gender advisor. I'm sure we can always find a way.
Thank you.
We did, in June, we had a 2-day workshop. I don't know if any of you were, Sarah, you were there. We had a 2-day workshop on some of the tools in the toolkit. Mostly it was for our sponsorship, technical assistance staff. There are a few livelihoods people, I think, as well. And then I know that Our gender equality working group has scheduled 3 country-level training workshops.
Yeah.
The first one's in Zambia in October, I think.
Mhm.
So
There's going to be one in London too, in December or January.
Okay.
And they're really quite basic and simple. It's not
and
as
they're well
complex.
explained in the
And they're
Yeah,
really
it's
well
really
explained.
well
So,
explained.
yeah.
Continuum is very good. There's like a tool, right?
Yeah, there's
That's
a tool that really defines how would you even define this in detail. I don't have time for this right now, but it's very hands-on, so you don't need to be.
And it's also, if you have a gender advisor or a gender rep within your team, maybe that could be the person that can go through the tools and always contact someone that is more expert from the gender equality group, for example. That's an idea.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it's maybe trained in US, for example.
Maybe just one last thing. So that's because for a long time we actually did not have enough gender advisors in Save the Children, or they were in UK, or there weren't any really. So then we had one advisor, and there was so much demand. So she then started training gender champions across a lot of different departments, and that's really taken off. People are very interested in doing it, and they're in high demand. So that might be a good model for other.
Yeah, especially for the this is going to be streamlined.
Okay.
So, I mean, do you want to hand over to Sarah? You want to hand over to Sarah?
Yeah, Sarah, are you there?
Which Sarah? Which Sarah are you talking to?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm here. I was just
Great.
muted.
Our heart was dropping.
3 steps to unmute myself.
So do you want So she should say next.
Yeah.
So can you please say next for each slide? Sorry, I know.
Yes.
Great. Perfect.
So can we pull up the slides? I'm still seeing the last deck.
So there is a delay if you're watching the live stream.
Okay. All right, and I will just look at mine.
Yeah, look at yours and tell us to move.
Is this loud enough? Yeah.
Okay. So I'll get started with slide 2 then. I'm going to just talk quickly about what the roster is technically, and then we'll jump into how it works, why it matters for programming. So on slide 2, you can see it is a survey that is made of non-sensitive questions that are very basic about households and the girls and boys who live in them. We use an app called ODK Collect to collect the information on an Android phone, so it's managed without paper surveys, entirely electronic, and it doesn't need a Wi-Fi connection while you're out in the field doing the data collection. So it's a very simple process that is totally appropriate to settings where internet connection is quite weak. But the real engine of this is that that is one way that it simplifies the way that you collect information about girls in our communities. It just happens that the technology supports us, which is great. But the real thing that we simplify is getting the information quickly by going to every household in the community and gathering just the basic information we need to inform program decision making. So on the next slide, you can see it's managed in a cloud storage service called ONA, which the Population Council has an agreement with. So anybody who uses the Girl roster with us has all of their data stored in this online service, which we then use to use a rapid analysis program which runs automatically online, so you don't have to know anything about data analysis to use the tool. Can we go to the next slide? So the real value of the tool is that it gets the information about all of the girls in a community. Next slide. And then it produces a snapshot of who they are, and it shows up in this basic template, which groups girls, as you can see on the age group with vertical axis, by meaningful categories. So we begin with age 6 and we go up to age 24 because those are girls who either should be in schools, they're between the ages of 6 and 18. This can vary a little bit depending on the country context, but typically there's a legal requirement that girls be in school in those ages. So we can tell which girls are getting the basic entitlements that they're expected to have based on just living in this country. And then it also groups them by meaningful categories within those ages. So primary school, and then we really focus on early adolescence. So you can see that 10 to 12, 13, 14, 15 to 17, each smaller age groups, because we know that girls' transitions start to mount in that very quickly in that period. Girls are first organized by whether they're unmarried or married, because we know from evidence from global programming that marriage is the indicator of girls' vulnerability in most cases, and it's also an incredibly important piece of information for programmers to have. So if you're focusing on a program for girls in general, you can know from the beginning that that means something very different for girls who are married and girls who are unmarried. Then it sorts girls according to whether, if they're unmarried, it sorts them according to whether they're in school or out of school, because again, that's a core entitlement, and it's also an important marker that we can use to translate into basic decisions like how do you present the program? Is it to a family? Do you communicate about educational opportunities that are going on in a place to particular families or not? The sort of day-to-day decision-making that you need for a program. Then it sorts among unmarried girls on their accompaniment status, because we also know that even if you're in school and you're not living with either of your parents, your risk of leaving school or getting married or having a baby before you reach 18 is much higher than if you're living with both parents. We also group girls who are living with one parent separately, because we know even though there are tons of examples of very supportive single parents, the time burden and the way that girls' lives are shaped can often be quite different if they're living with one parent versus both. Then on the other side, we group girls who are married according to whether they have a child or not, because that has important implications for program design as well. So a program for girls who have children needs to consider the way that they use their time quite differently than one for girls who don't. We also know that we can intervene early with girls who don't have a child yet in a way that can have an incredibly important impact if it helps them to delay having a baby by, a year. I should point out, we also say that girls in communities where we use the roster go up to age 24, because we also want the information about the young women who might be able to serve as resources for a program, or mentors, or potential facilitators who can have a really important role in making sure that a program reaches the girls that it's intended for and has a real impact for them. We can go to the next slide. We also automatically produce a detailed profile of girls according to whether they have girls who have children. So all of the girls in this table are in the previous table, but they were first grouped only on marital status. So we didn't have any information about unmarried girls with children in the previous table, but we have it here, and we can use this to further hone in on which girls we want to include, how to make sure that they are reached, and how to make sure that girls who potentially, in this table, for example, there are 5 girls who are 18 to 24 who are not married and have a baby, but they're in school. And girls like that may have something to offer as mentors to younger girls that we want to tap into. So we produce all of this information, and then it is immediately available for program staff to make decisions.
Sorry, it's just,
Go to the
sorry, one thing. We only have 5 minutes, so we should maybe move to, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Right, so I will say for the last piece of output that's important is going to be the information on boys, which was is part of a module that was developed by the Women's Refugee Commission, which is our partner on developing the tool to work in humanitarian settings. So we can also collect information on boys that complements the information on girls and can show immediate things like, are there more girls out of school than boys? How might their lives be similar or different in a given community? We also collect information on the community itself. And do you want to just skip to the Youth in Action case studies? Would that be? Irene?
Yeah. We're on it. Sorry, I forget.
Okay.
I cannot see anything.
Okay. So there's some more information here about the reasons why we focus on girls, going from national statistics to girls' experiences with their own communities, as well as information that we have from programs which shows that the girls who we most want to reach, who are often also the girls, the young people in communities who have the most investment in the community itself. So the girls who are often excluded are also often excluded from programming. So the tool really helps us to see who the girls are before we set up a program so that we can make decisions to make sure those girls who may be hard to reach can be included. I'm going to skip down and say quickly that we, slide 14, the roster has been used in Save the Children programs in 3 different settings. First, with Women's Refugee Commission, it was piloted in a peri-urban community in Egypt where there was a concentration of Syrian refugees, and it was used to inform some basic participatory activities with girls in setting up a new child-friendly space. And then I'll hand it over to Julie to talk a bit about how it's been used with Youth in Action. And that would be slide 15.
Thank you, Sarah. Just like Sarah said, one of the things that we've done with Youth in Action, after going through our formative research, we noticed that we still had issues around gender, especially girls' participation and access to our program. So we had to adapt the girl roster to Ethiopia and Malawi. So what we've done with Ethiopia, one of the key challenges we had were on different levels. In Ethiopia, we found out that the mentors, or that people who are really implementing our programs, were mostly men. So you would have like a group of 30 mentors and only 3 women. So we wanted to understand what is really happening, because what that shows is if the community doesn't see any female role model, then the assumption is the girls may not even turn up. So we used the girl roster, chose one community. Yes, 2 men. We chose a community that was really densely populated, and we found out that they were really, like, we worked around like 400 households, and we found out that there were really like different girls within that community, but also we couldn't find, like, when you went down to the last table where you have 19 to 14, people would be like our facilitators or mentors, the numbers reduced. And also the program team back then kept on telling us that they have issues of migration, where you have the older the girls get, the more they migrate to other cities, or they get out and go to the Gulf countries. So that really helped us understand how we're going to work with the roster gave us the real facts on how we should improve our program and how we could work with such findings. And then if you look at the table, I think that's what I've been talking about. The orange color shows the numbers, like our target. So again, with the roster, we had to adapt it to the Youth in Action needs. we had to make sure that it will help us look out for boys themselves, but also the girls. So you could see, if you're going to work with Ethiopia, the target is 14 to 15. So we had to find out in that community, do we have these girls? And if they're there, are they in school? Or how many of them are out of school? And then those are some of the things that we found out. But before I conclude, and I have like a minute, if you look at the yellow thing, between 6 and 9 years, that age, everyone is supposed to be in school, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So the roster was able to tell us that, you know what, we still have issues there. You know, that's really a huge percentage of girls who are not in school. However much is not our target, but if we had to work with our colleagues who are working with education, that would be very important for them to look out for. So those were some of the things that we looked at, that we're looking at. So if you look at the screen, so when the girls are out of school, there's a big assumption that either, whether they get married or not, they might start giving birth, okay? And sometimes this becomes a challenge to get them out of the poverty cycle if they start giving birth and all the things happening. So when you look at married girls with children, that 7 is a huge number, because either they got their children way before 18 years or even within that age. Okay? Stop.
Yep. We need to move on.
Oh, yeah, questions?
So move on.
So is it possible to ask a question?
If you want to.
Do we have?
I mean, the next is, the next is the exercise, so we could probably reduce the exercise.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
We're going to go through an exercise, and I think if your question is not answered, then we'll have like 10 minutes to.
Is this related to actually when we piloted this in Egypt? Mm-hmm. So that it was extremely helpful, but there was one issue, and it was a discussion at the time, and I wanted to ask whether they were thinking. The thinking was, can we include boys? Fine, that's already looks like it's in the making. But the question about are they working and not working in humanitarian settings is very, very essential, because it gives you a lot of answers as to why they're out of school, and they may be facing protection issues. So my question is there any plan to potentially expand that set of very basic questions to say how many of them are working?
Yes, I think for naturally we had to answer that question because this is a livelihood program, and we also needed to know how many of the boys and girls are working. So we're able to adapt that question and discuss it.
So I can jump in quickly and say that we start with this information because it's quickly obtained and very non-sensitive, and sometimes work can be a more complex issue. However, in humanitarian settings, sometimes that's been included. We also can use this as a first step to identify potential participants in other activities, so we can get the information from the girls or boys directly once they've been identified using the roster. So this is done talking to ideally an older woman in a household rather than the young people themselves. And often, if we want to get them included in program design, it is another step beyond. It's the first step that we use beyond the roster. So in WRC, this is something called the I'm Here approach. And the next step is always participatory activities that get information about what the young people are most concerned with in the places where they live. So I'm sorry that's not a totally straightforward answer, but the purpose is largely to have it be adaptable to many settings. And
okay, so we move to exercise. Yeah.
What? Okay. Everyone is so quiet, but I really need you to start talking. Whether you're talking to me or someone else, but we need to start talking. So do you mind if we can sit on our tables? The next exercise, we're going to do it around our tables, okay? Thank you.
How many groups do you want, Julie? How many?
Where did you say?
Yeah, I saw that. It did, yeah. Yeah. No, there you go. Yeah. So we'll chat and then we'll go through it at some point down the road. I think probably all good things. So you would explain what is up in the air.
So do we need to redraw this?
Good.
No.
Good.
Aisha, 17. She's not in school.
7 hours.
Judy would explain.
Living with both parents. She's not married. So she is, how old is she? 17.
So we're going to look at a case study, and our case study is around a program that is trying to reach, that is trying to end child marriages.
Yeah, as in, I don't know. Yeah, so yeah, we used just an actual program that was going to use the girl roster, but we're still in the inception. So how to put it? Inception time. So yeah, so the program is called More Than Rights Alliance. This was funded by the MOFA, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the Netherlands. So it's a 5 years program. It's a multi-country program in 5 countries, and we're going to be working with Pop Council. What was the other one? Yeah, Population Council. Well, obviously Save the Children, Oxfam, and One Health-based local organization, SUMAFI. So in the 5 countries we have for outcomes, one's related to SSR, sexual reproductive health, youth economic empowerment, focusing on girls especially, and that has a lot of the employability skills, financial inclusion, and financial literacy. We're going to have education, and obviously a lot of the community and leadership engagement through the families. So the context, yeah, what I said. So we would like to also hasten access to education, and the objective is basically to reduce the number of girls married before 18 years old. So yeah, that's the case study. You want to introduce the exercise?
So what we're going to do is, I hope everyone has an output table. We're going to use that. So going back to what Sarah Blake was saying, I want to introduce you to the different kinds of girls. And when you look at the girls that I introduced, try to work in pairs. So if you can sit next to someone, just in pairs of 3 people, and try and answer the question like, working pairs mark where the girls fit according to their age, okay? Marital status, schooling, accompaniment, and parenting status. So just like the discussion we just had with Sarah. Oh no. Danny again. So, IT skills. So the first girl is called Aisha. So if you can look at all these different kind of girls in your group, just in pairs, can you try and see look at the output table, the table that you have, and try to circle and see where does Aisha fall, Nadia, Fatima, and as you're done, as a table, take off time to look at the answers that you've come up with, okay? So we'll have like 2 minutes for that.
Oh my God, talking about time pressure. Lack of time.
Okay, good. You got
Is there another prize associated with this?
The scenario doesn't give you.
Don't worry, I'm gonna give you lots
I got a cancer.
Watch out for this, please.
That's right.
So she's would she also work in school?
She's between the right? Or she's between.
You put her here, but you also put married.
Oh, sorry.
Should, right? Not, she's married, that doesn't fix all
Also, I think there's another sheet. Because this child, but there's
But then that's
yeah,
they only want to know from
I would just call it that because you have a
So then number 5,
she
Okay, business, she's out of house. She doesn't fall into.
My job is Diana.
Diana is 12.
Nadia is married, with children.
Oh, wait a minute.
yeah.
Yeah, second, this is just a
What do you get married?
Okay, can we?
Julie, are we supposed to do both parts right now?
Yes.
We're done. That's up time.
Okay, 1 minute.
You finish with, you know.
That's because Nick
What's also admin, one is with care, right? One is help. You need help.
But the only thing that we
Maybe the most ones, right? I think they're unmarried and they have children. Are we looking at this table?
You could just have another married, yes, no.
So we need to.
there's nothing married in
Because it's still
so they can do whether there's travel, they are each.
versus the other side,
Yeah.
13 to 14.
Earlier on, somebody said like 71 to
We've done it.
however many vacancies, like the 2,000 more they like.
Out of school,
I have their married and still in school. You capture that.
Children's is 9.
Okay. Are we done?
Yeah, we need to be done.
Have you been able to share on your table what you think about the different 5 girls? Or 4?
Yeah.
Maybe look how the number jumps. Maybe married and has a child. 18 and 4, and then
Yeah, we need to.
Okay, can we have one person share each from?
Hello, everyone.
Hello. Can we have one person from each table to share with us? I think we have like 5 tables. Yeah. So which table can tell us about Aisha? What are some of the things that you've been able to? How have you plotted Aisha on the output table? Who wants to go first? Okay, go for it.
Okay, so what am I doing? I'm telling you
Where
we are.
Yes.
So we mapped Aisha to the basic output table on the first page. So she's on the
the leftmost column against 15 to 18 years age group. Yeah?
Yes. So again, Aisha is between she's between 15 to 18, but then she's one of the girls who are on track. She's still staying with the parents, she's in school, so that might be a girl who is still stable, okay? So can we have someone else tell us about Salma?
Yeah. Over here.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Selma, she's 13, is not married in school and living with her mother. So we had living with one parent at 13. So she is the yellow. So she would be part of our off track, right? Okay.
Yes.
She's not married, but she's living. I guess she's a single. She is in school though.
Yeah. That's right. So again, just like what Sarah was telling us in her presentation, having one parent is also an issue, okay? Sometimes compared to having two parents. So can we look at Nadia? Anyone who was able to go through work with Nadia?
There, Julie?
Yes.
So Nadia is under the married column, doesn't have a child, age group 15 to 18.
Yes. But I also don't know if you noticed that the information we got from Nadia, we couldn't tell whether she was in school or not.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that alone doesn't stop us to kind of like put her in a certain category, because like Sarah said, being married is one of the things that really affect girls' participation in the program that we do.
But Julie, that's the question I had actually to Natalia, that the output table doesn't tell you whether married girls are still in school or not. Why is that? Why was the output table designed that way?
Well, I was hoping that someone should ask me that. Sarah, I think, Sarah, you can jump in, but that's one question that we always get.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's often the first question that we get.
Today is the seventh question.
So one reason is if you look at the evidence, it's pretty unusual to find married girls who are in school. The other piece is we have that information. So we collect more information than is in these tables, but we have made the decision to put information about marriage as more important than information about schooling. Largely because of this issue about how unusual it is for married girls to continue school, and also because when you're trying to recruit for a program, you would put a married girl in a married girls club, and you would have to engage her husband to make sure that she shows up in a way that if you were doing a program for girls who are in school, you would not put that as the first step. So if you were making the decision to do a program that is focused on girls who are in school, you can then go into the detailed tables and make sure that you understand if there are girls who are married and in school, and you can adjust your strategy slightly around them. But at the initial observation level, marriage tends to be more important.
Did you or someone say earlier actually that having married girls in school could be used as a role model for those girls? Like there is school life after marriage?
Right.
Yeah, so I thought it would be used for some, that the data could be used for as a positive deviance kind of role model. Okay.
It's completely, like that's absolutely something you can do. It's just not the first observation.
Isn't this skewing for the younger girl populations? I mean, if you look at 19 to 24, not unheard of to be married in school. And obviously, you're probably not in primary, primary, secondary school, but you're, higher education or some type of training course or some type of other school. But this is skewing younger, I would say, just by that categorization.
So, I mean, I'm not I think that part of the thinking is that a program for adolescent girls focusing younger gives us a stronger foothold.
Okay, Sarah, I've just been showed a big placard of stop. And we'll just have like one question. I just wanted to respond, like when you look at Youth in Action, our program was really, our target is between 14 to 18, but if you look at 10 to 12, this Youth in Action was like for a 6-year-old. 6-year, not old. It's supposed to be, it was supposed to take 6 years. So what that meant was like, if I had done this girl roster earlier when I just started, then that would inform even the team that, you know what, when you're recruiting the next year, these are some of your people who might be your clients, okay, or targets. And when it comes to 19 to 24, when you see those who are in school, they might be in vocational training and everything, but it also shows you that we'll go to the next table and you get it more, the numbers, the real numbers. Patrick, you had a question.
Well, just a comment. I can see how this could be a very useful tool. I don't like the term off track. And why don't we say at risk?
Exactly.
So we use the term off track because we can say very specifically that it means that a girl is not getting particular entitlements. So she should be in school and unmarried until she's 18. And if she's not, then she is off track in a measurable way. So it's a little bit more specific than saying vulnerable or at risk, which are what we would usually use.
But if she's in school and living with one parent, a parent died, for example, to say that she's off track sounds pejorative.
So we would say that girl is likely to go off track, but we have grouped her in the more like the color coding is done here to emphasize the potential for her to go off track. It's not saying that she is totally excluded and missing out already.
And again, Sarah, I think one of the things is like, again, we need to, we're saying that we can adapt. This is how Honor and what Pop Council is using. But if it were me, and I'm using this information to talk about a program that is using the term girls who are vulnerable, I think this would still.
It's just bringing specific categories to terms that we use all the time.
Okay. So next. So again, in our pairs, if I could still take you back to the output tables that you have, can you work in your small groups too? If you could go through this table and you answer the questions that are coming, that are below the table. For example, how many girls are there in each age cohort? Zip what you expect. So if you look at that, how would you interpret that using the questions that you have on your handout? Does that make sense? Yes?
So why are there
Just one
15,
question, clarification.
13 to 14?
When you refer to parent, could that be guardian? I mean, some children live with their grandparents or.
So when you say parents, it's not just your biological mother, father, but it can be the caretaker, the guardian, and the adult who's staying.
It's based on how the question is answered. So we come to a household and we say, I'm collecting information about Aisha, for example, and then I say, does she live with both parents? Does she live with her mother? Does she live with her father? And it's based on how it's interpreted. We don't check. I mean.
They would say.
Okay, can we take off like 3 minutes? 3 minutes. 3 minutes. 3 minutes to just go through some of these questions and we see how we can interpret the data.
So it's about 25. It varies, but 25 per year.
Yeah, until you get to 18. Lost.
No, it's between 16 and 17. That's 4 years, right? Yeah, so it's down to 20 a year.
I know.
What's the average age? What's the number of children per year? So these age categories are different. Some are 3 years, some are 4 years. But if you average them by the number of years, it varies a little bit. 25, 13, 14, 6, 7, 8, 9, 4 years. 30,
Maybe 32, 3, yeah.
Julie? Okay. Julie? Did you want us to work on 2A?
So,
down to 20.
Well, then what did you?
Oh, wait, which came first?
Regular
4s and 3s, these are regular. Like, why wouldn't you just say, like, 6-year-olds and 8-year-olds? You can really see that.
Maybe they don't have, many of them don't know.
I suspect that's that way because of so it's programmatic as opposed to actually using data to determine what your program is. You've got a program already, you're fitting your data into it, which is a bit odd. Right, so you've got your kind of early primary 6 to 9-year-olds, and then you get into lower secondary 6 to 12-year-olds, upper secondary 13, 14. And then if kids actually make it to secondary, then they get to the 15 category, and then your youth, kind of 24-year-olds, which is an odd.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, what you do for each one of these messaging.
This is 4 years.
Right, you would expect that the numbers would be, if you average the numbers per year, you expect them to be the same, whereas you're actually not seeing that.
Either they're or they're hidden, maybe.
Yeah.
1-year-old.
Yes.
And very, very few of them have
We all having children after today.
We don't know. I mean, and also.
There's that other little fact that you start getting married at age 15 to 18, presumably those 4 are higher up.
Yeah, no, something about
one question.
One of the first times you mentioned the younger students entering at age 7 as opposed to age 6. That's right. Do you want to know if that's a policy thing or whether that's cultural? We don't want our kids going to school. They're just too young at this point.
So we have one more minute.
Yeah. Right, so school might be too far away, so you don't want your babies walking out that far. There may be reasons why.
But it's the younger girls that
kids should be in school at 6 and they're not.
It is bloating. I
Very interesting that we have
How many girls under the age of 12 are not usually they're like in second or 8 to 9.
out of school.
Yeah.
19 to 24.
Well, other development, like sex work, child exploitation.
Seem to be a significant barrier.
Should we just carry on with that? Going on to that question. Off the top of my head, I would say.
Okay, let's have
Exactly. That's what a lot of tables have concluded.
let's have one person from each table to just wrap up one of the key things that you found out during this analysis. One person to wrap it up, like one of the most interesting thing you've pulled out.
So we looked at girls' rates of out of school, assuming that married girls are out of school. And if you break it down by age level, if you look at the total, it's if you look at the total of 18 and under, it's only like 12%, which we were saying, okay, depending on the context, it's actually not that bad. But then if you break it down by age level finer than that, there's actually a very alarming rate in the 15 to 18. So, I mean, showing sort of the usefulness of disaggregating like this.
Yes. Someone else from another table? Yes.
We noticed that the age categories are not all the same, but what you seem to be seeing a declining number of girls per year. It goes from something like 30 down to 20 or less per year.
That is true. And
well, and then the question was, so what's the number that stands out to you, and what's your impression? And we thought, well, there's a few possible explanations for that, but some of them are worrying.
Sure. Okay. Jonathan, your table?
Well, this is a question that relates to the next exercise, but we thought that depending on the context, a girl with two parents may be more likely to be a victim of child marriage compared to a girl with no parents or one parent, because things like dowry and the respectability of the family come into play, and that can be a factor in child marriage. So we would want to conduct some research to understand in this context, how does the presence of a one parent or no parents affect likelihood that a girl is going to be married off at a young age.
That would be a good hypothesis to test out. If it's true or not. Then Nikki, your table, anything that came out?
We were talking about a lot of stuff.
How program people can use this table.
Right. So I think what Patrick said was something that struck me as well, is the different numbers of ages in each block or in each cell skews any comparison that you would do with demographic trends. So if you have the first age group of 6 to 9 has 4 ages, the next has 3, then there's 2, and then there's 4, I think, or 5. And so if you're just looking at this across the board and looking at numbers, you look at the 129, 93, 50, 83, 109, you're like, what's happening at that age group of 50? But you have to realize that there are only 2 age brackets in there, right? And I think that if we're trying to make this something that's useful to country teams, that adds an additional level of analysis on them on top of the level of analysis they already have to do. And so is there a way that we could standardize it so that it's easier for them to just look at this table and say, the age brackets are the same, so I can look at those ages and actually look at, is there a fallout in ages, is there a growth in ages, something like that.
Just add percentages.
So I can say quickly that the table can be customized however needed. This is grouped for programmatic reasons. It's not grouped for it's done like this to emphasize the breaks in younger ages, but it can be done year by year if you wanted to. But it is thinking at the community level, so broader trends would be more difficult to show anyway.
Thank you so much, everyone. Sarah, do you want to jump in and share some of the challenges that the tool has and go through the remaining 2 slides. We have
Sure, I can go. I know we're a little pressed for time, so I can go back, and I don't need to show the slides for this. I can just say when we're talking about using the roster, we can tell you, it costs a certain amount of money for a training, to buy phones and pay enumerators and program staff. And it can be used at different stages of a program. So it is often used for the initial stage before you set anything up and when you're just coming in to a community and you want to learn more about it very quickly. But it's also been used as we've done with Youth in Action in places where there's a program already in place and we want to understand who's being reached now, and understanding, and particularly in the Youth in Action case, we know that there's a challenge with keeping girls in the program, so we want to know, with that problem statement, how does learning more about girls in this community and seeing who of the girls here are participating in the program, how can that help revise basic strategies in moving forward? I can say that it takes about 10 minutes to do a survey, so the amount of time that it takes to use the tool is totally a function of how many enumerators do you have, how big is your community, and how many phones do you have. And we tend to send people out in groups of 2. We can customize for language. We can include questions about program participation or other details that might be really important to a specific context. And we can also include questions about boys. But more than that, it's really about how are you going to use it in a program? How much time do you have to spend reviewing outputs is an important question, but it's also, what would you do otherwise? How would you be spending this time without having gone through a survey of each community where you're working?
Sarah, can I jump in for just a second? Yeah. So just from a program perspective, because we wanted to implement it in the 5 countries. Well, Malawi is already there, so that's fine. But for the other countries, for the child merits program, and we found a lot of reticency, from the country offices, because it requires a lot of time, and we were talking about time before, the challenge of time, the challenge of staff capacity, because you need to have staff to go, the interviews, this and that. So yeah, we had a lot of negative feedback from the country offices, and we couldn't allocate actually budget for it. And the donor was like, well, you already have the group of girls from other programs, so just use them. So that's one of the challenges that we faced, at least when we started this multi-country program.
I have a question about that. Is Jessica still in the room, Jessica Taylor? No, she had to leave. So I'm just wondering, in so many of our programs, we do sort of extensive community mapping when we come into the community. And I'm sure this requires a lot of community entry, because I'm sure you can't just walk into a community and go knocking on doors and ask about, girls' situations. But we do that anyway, and it just seems like this would be fairly straightforward to integrate into one of our community mapping. So I'm just surprised at the reticence of the country office.
I know, but it's that was the case because they already had the groups formed, and they didn't want to kind of take a step back and maybe say, oh yeah, now we have to identify another group of and that's actually not good.
Can I just jump in here? Because with the experience we had for the 2 countries, again, we had to take it back to the country offices. One of the things that we've had to learn is using a phone to pass survey is still a newish kind of thing.
Yeah.
And once people don't understand what it is, they first say no. Even the country officers will be, before even they get to understand what does this tool mean, how you need to use it. And I think in Ethiopia, at first, even the enumerators are like, oh no, we prefer papers, we can pile up all the papers we want, but we want to do this.
Yeah, it really depends.
But what came out after we went out the day 1, everyone was like, can we do all other surveys using this phone?
Yeah.
Since now they're going to be a property of Ethiopia. Yeah. So I think for me, what I've learned is, one, going back to what Diane was saying in the morning, how do we use the 101, the introduction of something like this? Because if you just go in as advisors, as technical people, and you're like, here you go, check it out, you're going to find a lot of resistance. But then for people to look at, like we've just done a rapid assessment in Malawi, and they know they have issues around access, but they have less time. So when they went through their introductory series of girls, they're like, okay, wait a minute, how can we do that? How can we use this? So again, it's a new thing, and even for everyone who's in this room, to be honest with you, this is not enough time for you to really be convinced that this thing works.
And it's also showing the added value, and also every country is very different. Like India was all about doing it, but of course Mali or Nigeria was a little bit more like, what is this? And because they have their own limitations. But it's also about that kind of marketing, approach to the tool.
Can I just, because we're running out of time, how much time do we have?
So we have, it's 4:30. We can allocate a few minutes more for questions, but then we need to wrap up.
Okay. Can I just wrap up the presentation before the questions? So, we had this SWOT question, like, all this is said and done. You've collected the data. You're using the very nice fonts to do all this. But the question is, so what for the country offices? Like, how does this work? What does this mean for us? So one of the things that we learned was, this was one of the senior management person in Malawi, and his quote was like, now that we have this information, the question is, what are we going to do about it? Because whatever we've been discussing is the how, which you're already doing in the old way of collecting data. So one of the things that the team in Malawi is working on is like, one is two-way, it's two-folded. How can we use this data to inform youth in action to better reach adults and girls that they're working with? But also the second one was, how can the entire country office use this kind of data? Like you've seen the output. It's not just about youth in action, it's about, if you look at our health program, if you look at child protection, if you look at all other programs, this output can tell you so much. So I'll give you an example. The area where we did this research, Save the Children was implementing like 5 other programs in the same area. They had keeping girls at school, they had youth in action, they had different other things. But if you look at that table, between 6 and 9, we noticed that numbers of girls who are out of school were huge. So one of the things that the country offices was saying that we need to break that working in silos. Like, okay, if youth in action, you have all these things and you've worked it out and you've not shared it with keeping girls at school who are really struggling to make sure that girls stay in school and do other things. We need to talk. We need to use these output tables with the other people and you see how do they work for them. So again, this was really helpful because in most cases you collect this kind of information and you're like, okay, so what if you have all this? So it was really helpful for Malawi to come up with 2 things. And one of them was like, okay, one, from now we know like we've been resisting using single girls groups, but let's try them out. And the messages, how do we change the messages we're giving out there? And how do we improve the community mobilization? Because when we're out in the community, we notice that it's only men who come for community mobilization. When you're doing the resource mapping that we didn't take you through, you'd find that all women were at the water, the places where they fetch water from, as our staff members were doing community mobilization. So you would not even reach the women to come and attend some of your sessions. So those are some of the things that we really came up with. And I would say stop. Okay. So can we open up the questions? How many minutes do you have?
2 minutes for a question. 2 questions.
You're supposed to do that. The questions?
No, yeah, well, I think we're just going to discuss if anyone else has questions.
So in Malawi or the other, have you combined this with focus groups? Because it seems like it's great to have some quantitative data, but a lot of what comes out here are questions. And as program teams, we can make assumptions about what's going on, but we probably don't want to do that. It makes more sense to have some conversations about it. So, where are those girls who are missing at this table? So is that happening, or is it really just the quantitative information that's happening right now?
So I think for Malawi was really a lucky scenario because already within our midterm review, we knew we had issues around gender. So we did a rapid gender assessment, which almost gave us the same kind of information that we got from the roster. So we kind of like, we're using like 2 documents to look at, okay, this is what your assessment is telling you. So if they're saying there are less girls who are coming to the program, then we did the roster to say, but do we really have those girls? Which it might be one way of saying that girls are not participating, and then you go, like we did in Ethiopia, that we don't have female facilitators, and we did door-to-door, and we found out, honestly, they're not there. Those who are there have lower education requirements compared to what Youth in Action wanted, so either they had to reduce that or they had to work around that. So that's what it was. We're lucky to use both things.
Yeah, this is not a tool to be used as standalone. I think it has to be combined with other things that you do at a program level.
Can I add to this? Actually, in Egypt, and it was presented earlier, but in Egypt we did the I'm Here approach, which is the girls roster plus then you do focus group discussions with girls. So when we approached the households, we asked, would you like to be involved afterwards in a follow-up? And then some of those girls came. So then we went, a lot deeper into things with them. They ranked the key issues they were facing and why. So trying to really get a bit more like the flesh of it. But it has informed the country office girls programming actually quite substantially. So it's been very, very useful. Yeah. But I think that's what I like the I'm Here approach, because it has this qualitative component.
Which approach?
The I'm Here approach, so it's the girls roster plus, this is the Women's Refugee Commission, so plus the community mapping, and you do also the group discussion process, so like the whole package.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. This is great, and I'm so glad that we've ended with this conversation, because this is exactly what the roster is designed for. And I would also say, thinking about that point about what the donor wants, I think that you can use the roster to say to your donor, are you comfortable with us just setting up a program and having some girls show up? Or do you want us to go out to the community and understand who the girls are, so that we make sure to get the girls who are going to benefit most from the program, so that the impact will be the highest possible? Because we have a tool that can do that. And we've definitely supported partners in using it for that in the past. So I really appreciate it, and thank you all so much. This has been really great.
Sarah,
and I'm sorry that I can't be there in person.
If anyone wants to know more about the roster or wants to use it, you can get always in touch with Sarah.
Yes, and I'll pass around the slides with my contact information, as well as some resources from the council and from WRC on the roster and some of the other tools that we're using.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I'm going to now take a few minutes to thank you, a few people, a lot of people, but also to try to wrap up such an interesting, at least I think, but I'm sure you all do, an interesting day full of knowledge and experiences and lessons from all these programs we're doing in this area of work. I actually wrote down a lot of notes on what I think were my key takeaways, but then I'm wondering, well, maybe it's better to hear from you. So does anyone want to kind of share their highlight, the key, something they learned that was new or something that they think is really important to remind others of that we heard today?
I really enjoyed the conversation at the beginning of the day about transferable skills and integrating them into other program work that's happening. So for example, in education, incorporating the transferable skills into lessons that are already happening at school, not making them a standalone component. Recognizing we have teachers who are already super overburdened, and that giving yet another set of tasks for them to do is probably unrealistic. So to I'm coming away thinking more on how to do that.
Okay.
I don't know the answers yet.
I had a similar bullet that said smart integration around transferable skills. Nick?
I think for me, a big takeaway from today is the importance of knowledge management. It's great that we have like the strategic priority now and we're working towards it, but just in this room, the number of people who have like mentioned, oh, I didn't even know you were doing that, and we could have used that information, or we could have done that before. And so maybe if there's some room within ASST to put together some of this knowledge in some place, I'm looking at you people, it would be really helpful so that there would be a go-to place for knowledge around transferable skills, around the financial capabilities, around gender assessments for adolescents. That would be useful.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely all the materials and things we shared today will be hosted on OneNet and maybe now on Facebook at work or every other tool we're going to be using for knowledge management.
But curation of knowledge management. I think sometimes we end up putting everything on there, but rather like what's going to be useful for someone else, and not just putting everything together. So like, how do we curate it? And I think ASST might be a good, like, we have a functioning body that can help with that.
Yeah,
maybe.
So definitely. I mean, the global working group again is part of the task of the global working group is this, and we're meeting for the next 2 days after today to discuss key activities, and knowledge management is always there, but somehow always ends up a priority that gets deep. Anyway, yeah, we're gonna think.
So I want to, no, doesn't mean about time, it's actually a comment, if that's okay. So Niket, thank you for bringing that up. And Sylvia, maybe you were going to mention this, but I'll go ahead. There is a table back here with all sorts of wonderful resources. Feel free to take as many as you want. That doesn't solve your curation problem, I know, but you can curate your own pile.
I've already curated my pile, Patricia.
And then the other point is that if you want to learn anything about Skills to Succeed, we do have a Google Drive site, and we've tried to curate it the best we can. One thing is I would recommend for any of you who want to put your stuff online and want an easy way to do it, we found that creating this Google Drive, using Google Drive to do this has been really, really super easy. So,
yeah, and I mean, to be honest, I think we are trying to curate, and I think now in OneNet it's not like everything is in it. There's a set of things we think are useful from the key programs like Skills to Succeed and Youth in Action, but we need to continue that, and I think everybody needs to contribute by highlighting things that we think are key, not everything, but so it's work in progress.
I think we talked about integration this morning, and I think I want to repeat that as well. But I think the first step of curating this knowledge is the process that you're going through to develop the common approach on transferable skills. I'm hoping that all the good things that we heard about today are going to be part of the suite of tools and toolkits that are going to be part of that common approach, which is going to be vetted and kind of like become a package for those who are able to take a part of that to integrate to other programs or deliver as is. So that is one thing. But the other thing is the whole curation process. I know the global themes are responsible for that, but with what started in the health and nutrition global theme is going to continue with the other teams to look at what are the kind of the top 10 leading resources in XYZ area, and I think that's a very important, and that's why I'm here actually. Because of the knowledge sharing, it's a learning event.
So Moon is going to do all of it.
All of that.
Just give it all to her.
Solve that one. So I have 2 minutes, so I'm gonna do something unusual. I'm gonna pause this, but we're not done with the key learnings. But I'm going to thank, now that we are recorded, a few people, and then we're going to go back to the key learnings outside the live streaming. So thank you.
Stop it.
Sorry?
Tell me when you want me to stop it.
Oh, you can do that whenever you want? Okay, then let's go on with the key learnings. We can take another 10 minutes. So any key highlights from this group?
Just building on, I think, something Sarah Press said today. It's so encouraging to see this conversation coming together across sectors. I mean, I think that there have been various efforts at this throughout the years, but in recent, I would say last year, this year, definitely since the Child Poverty Initiative got going, I've been seeing more coalescing around the recognition that youth are, they're complete people, and we need to sort of program for them like they're people, and that doesn't mean just one sector at a time. And I mean, I've been at SAVE now, 7-ish years, and I want to say that I see the silos beginning to break down, and that's it. And to build on what Sarah said, it is for that reason a very exciting moment to be working on this stuff at SAVE.
And can I build on Ronnie's comment and recognize that the contributions of people from other departments at Save US who've shown up today? We've got food security people, we've got child protection people, we've got education people. The health people all send their regrets. They have very good excuses for why they're not here. We have the DHR people. So I just want to thank all of our colleagues at Save US for spending time with us today, because we really appreciate your contributions. So thanks.
Any other thoughts? Highlights, lessons. Okay, then I'm going to share mine.
One thing that I will, as an outsider, a comment that I have is
the meeting has been
there's very little discussion of how your approach to successful transitions complements other organizations' approaches or is different from those organizations' approaches. Is there a particular niche that, say, the children focuses on, a particular gap or problem? I say this just because I know, I could go to a session of plan and it's going to be similar to this in some respects, and maybe that's okay, and maybe it isn't. I don't know.
So we talked about this, and we had developed a little paragraph on this in the position paper, and I think when I asked around, at least the global working group, what did they think was the value add that Save the Children could bring to this area of work, but 2-3 things came up. One is, I think this issue of participation in child rights and youth rights based approaches being very unique, not only to Save, but SAVE having a big history and a global footprint with that type of approach. The second was the issue of smart integration. I mean, we are an organization that doesn't just do livelihoods, doesn't just do education. We can do it. We could potentially do it all in a smart, integrated way. And I forgot the last one.
I think focusing on deprived, the most deprived.
Focusing on the most deprived as our I think, really next big mission.
Scale and evidence of what works.
Oh yes, and we do. I think.
Just reading. These are refreshing.
You know this paper by heart, but clearly, yeah. The fact that we think we're really partnering. We have experience partnering with institutions that can really help us build evidence of what works in this area. Again, because we do this across the movement. We do it at scale. We can really contribute by providing evidence of what works and what doesn't. So but it's an ongoing question we ask ourselves.
I think if those are the things, then they just need to be part of the criteria that you use to discuss what the girl roster contributes to a project or not. That's just, picking that out of, the thin air as an example. But
yeah. Well, then, picking up on your comment, to me, a few of the highlights from today are, starting from the first session, actually, and then going to your comment. From transferable skills, the highlights for me are, first, they're a key way for us to, again, do smart integration, to put these whole youth, whole beings in a good pathway towards a good transition to work, but adulthood. They can't be taught. They're not like a personality trait, and they can be measured, and we have skills to do that. Our building blocks are mutually reinforcing. We have talked about financial capability and transferable skills. There's a lot of things that overlap, and we need to, again, build on these different blocks, one on top of the other. They're not in isolation. Meaningful engagement is tough, but it's something we have a history of at Save the Children, and we need to become, again, good at. And it's very important in humanitarian settings. Youth know what they want. We need to be able to support them in achieving their goals, not telling them what they need to do. And engagement and things like the girl roster are key to our mission to reaching the most deprived. We will not be able to reach the most deprived until we're able to analytically identify where they are and be able to reach them and engage them. So tools like the girl roster and the other two from the coalition are very useful and practical ways for us to start doing that and doing it better. I think this is it on my side. So now a few thanks. First of all, thank you so much to the Global Working Group that on top of preparing for the next 2 days of meeting really put their heads together to design this agenda, design the sessions, present, and we had coaches for each of these sessions that really tried to make it work in terms of the timing for the live streaming and all these different issues. Huge thanks to Kate DeShiel, Jessica Lippman, Courtney James, and Monica Caminici. They're on the back. They made it. And then thanks to my co-host, Patricia, and the Skills Succeed team and funder, Accenture, for giving us a wonderful Ethiopian lunch and other things in the room. I think that's it. So, and to all of you for coming, staying, engaging, participating, contributing, and making this a wonderful event.
Jessica, do you have logistics to announce?
Yeah.
The meeting is about to terminate.